So, um, have you ever found yourself trying to make sense of, a really big change in a huge organization, maybe at work or even looking at a government agency, and felt completely overwhelmed?
Oh, absolutely. It's like looking at this incredibly complex machine, maybe like a supercomputer, right?
Yeah.
And you're just staring at this tangle of wires. You know something important is going on inside.
But you can't quite piece it together. The why and the how feel impossible, and you just end up with, well, more questions.
Exactly. Well, today we're aiming to cut through some of that noise, offer some clarity, and maybe even some unexpected insights.
That's the plan. We're about to embark on a deep dive into something pretty foundational for the country, really. We're looking at the significant systemic changes happening right now at the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And this isn't just about, shuffling boxes on an org chart. It's much deeper. It's about refactoring a living, breathing, and frankly, vital system that affects all of us in one way or another.
Precisely. And our exploration today, it's powered by two really crucial sources that honestly fit together perfectly. First up, we have a recent memorandum from Secretary Brooke L. Rollins.
Right, the official blueprint.
Exactly. It lays out the comprehensive plan for the USDA's reorganization. Think of it as the what's and the how, the nuts and bolts of the changes.
And then to help us really understand the deeper implications, we've got this fantastic analysis by William L. Weaver. It's called A Systems View of the USDA's New Path.
Such a great title.
Isn't it? Weaver takes that secretary's memo and unpacks it using the lens of systems thinking, which is just incredibly powerful for understanding complexity.
It really is. So Weaver's article is kind of our guide today. It helps us see not just the individual changes, but the whole picture, how all these different pieces interact as a complete system.
The forest, not just the trees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty clear. We want to unearth the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from both these sources.
We're going beyond the headlines.
Way beyond. We want to help you, our listeners, understand not just what is happening at the USDA, but maybe more importantly, why these specific changes are being put in place, and crucially, what their potential impact might be down the road.
And we'll be leaning heavily on some core systems thinking concepts to do that. Things like feedback loops, hierarchy, entropy.
Isomorphism.
That's a big one in the analysis.
Right. And emergent properties. These ideas will help illuminate this massive transformation. It's going to be, I think, a really fascinating exploration, maybe even surprising in places.
Okay, let's dive in then. To really understand what's happening now, we need to set the stage. We need to get to grips with the enduring legacy of the USDA. President Lincoln famously called it the People's Department. That context is absolutely essential.
It truly is. You can't understand the present without understanding the past, especially with an institution like this. The USDA's identity, its foundational purpose, goes way back to 1862. Right in the middle of the Civil War.
Exactly. And President Abraham Lincoln, he didn't just establish the USDA in isolation. He had this much broader, integrated vision for the nation, for empowering citizens.
And calling it the People's Department. That wasn't just rhetoric, was it? It signaled a direct connection.
Absolutely. A direct link to the everyday lives of Americans, particularly those working the land, involved in agriculture, stewardship. It was fundamental.
And here's something fascinating, the kind of detail you sometimes miss. That same year, 1862, Lincoln also signed the Morrill Act.
Which is huge. That created the land-grant university system, fundamentally changed higher education, agricultural research in America.
And the source, Weaver's analysis, points out these two things, the USDA and the land-grant universities. They weren't separate initiatives. They were conceived as, and I quote, two pillars of a single grand strategy.
That's such a powerful framing, a unified vision, not just creating a department, but building capacity across the nation.
So what was the core idea behind that grand strategy? What was it aiming to achieve?
Well, it was about empowering citizens on multiple fronts, interconnected fronts. The strategy was to provide direct federal support and resources via the USDA,
Okay.
but also, crucially, localized, accessible agricultural and technical knowledge that would come from these new universities spread across the country.
So democratizing knowledge, essentially. Making practical science available to everyone, not just, the elites in big cities.
Precisely. Democratizing knowledge and resources. Making advancements in farming, in engineering, accessible. Imagine the impact on rural America, on fostering self-sufficiency, innovation.
And you can still see the direct results of that today, can't you? The source mentions institutions like the University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
Yeah, founded under the Second Morrill Act in 1890, a direct extension of that land grant mission specifically aimed at broadening access.
So when we talk about the USDA, we're not just talking about some building complex in D.C. We're talking about an institution with really deep historical roots.
A foundational philosophy of service.
And this genuinely symbiotic relationship with education and research all across the country, it's, like you said, it's in its DNA.
Exactly. And understanding this shared history, this symbiotic relationship, is why the current reorganization is so significant. It's the critical context.
Right. It's not just shuffling deck shares.
Not at all. From that systems thinking perspective, it's not just a reaction to budget cuts or, bureaucratic tidying up. It's seen as an intentional effort.
An effort to do what exactly?
To realign this foundational system, to bring it back into closer harmony with that original dual purpose we just talked about, federal support and localized knowledge.
And Weaver's analysis suggests viewing this with optimistic systemic improvement in mind.
Yes. The goal isn't destruction, it's refinement. Thoughtful rebuilding to better fulfill that original ambitious purpose for the People's Department.
Okay, so on that note of rebuilding and refining, let's talk about a challenge that, frankly, any large, complex, long-standing system faces eventually, and that's entropy.
Ah, yes. Entropy, a core concept in systems thinking.
Weaver's analysis describes the USDA as a vast, open system. And like any system, it's vulnerable to this sort of natural internal decay over time. What does entropy actually mean for an organization like the USDA?
That's a really crucial point, and systems thinking gives us a powerful way to understand it. Entropy, basically, is the natural tendency for systems to lose energy, structure, and order over time if left unchecked.
Like things winding down, becoming more disordered.
Exactly. Think of it as a drift towards chaos unless you actively put energy in to maintain order. Now, in a bureaucracy, what does that look like?
Yeah, how does it manifest?
Well, the analysis suggests processes can become more about sustaining the bureaucracy itself than about executing its primary mission.
Okay, so the system starts serving itself rather than its purpose.
Precisely. Imagine a machine that starts using more and more fuel just to turn its own gears, with less and less power actually going to the wheels to the output. That's bureaucratic entropy in a nutshell.
So if that's the concept, what does it look like on the ground for, say, a farmer trying to get help, or a researcher trying to get funding, or a community group applying for a grant? What's the real-world impact of that decay?
That's the vital question, isn't it? On the ground, entropy can show up in lots of ways. It could be incredibly slow decision-making because of redundant processes needing layers of approval.
Frustrating delays.
Hugely frustrating. It could be different departments unknowingly doing the same work, wasting taxpayer money, wasting valuable time.
Right.
Or you get information silos. One part of the USDA has critical data, another part desperately needs, but they can't get it easily, or maybe even at all. That leads to less effective programs, missed opportunities.
Or maybe the agency gets focused on, I don't know, internal targets and ticking boxes rather than the actual impact they're having out in the real world.
Exactly. Measuring the process instead of the outcome.
Yeah.
The real cost, ultimately, is a drop in responsiveness, a drop in effectiveness, and that erodes public trust and undermines the whole mission.
And the analysis makes a point of distinguishing the USDA here. It's an applied STEM agency, right? Its job is tangible outputs for stakeholders, farmers, consumers, rural communities.
Yes, that's a key distinction. It's very different from, say, the National Science Foundation, the NSF, which is primarily about advancing fundamental science. The USDA is about practical applications, solving real-world problems now.
So to understand how entropy hits an applied system like this, Weaver talks about looking at the key components of any system.
Right. He breaks it down into 3 core components. First, energy. For the USDA, that's pretty straightforward. It's financial resources, it's budget.
Okay, Manny.
Second, material. That's its people, the workforce, but also its physical stuff. Buildings, labs, equipment, infrastructure.
People and stuff. Got it.
And third, information. This is huge. It includes everything from cutting-edge research data, policy analysis, expert knowledge, all the way to the legislative mandates that tell the USDA what it's supposed to do.
Energy, material, information. Inputs.
Exactly. And ideally, in a healthy system, these components are all integrated, optimized, working together efficiently to produce valuable outputs. Food safety rules, new crop varieties, conservation programs, economic support.
But the problem of entropy, then, is that over time, the internal workings, the bureaucracy, can start consuming those inputs, energy, material, information, inefficiently.
Yes, diverting them from the primary mission. They get soaked up just keeping the bureaucracy running rather than producing those valuable outputs for the public.
So looking at it this way, the why behind this massive reorganization becomes much clearer. It's not just random changes.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's framed as a direct systemic intervention, an attempt to counteract that decay, that entropy.
To optimize how those core components, energy, material, information, are actually used to make sure they serve the mission.
Precisely. To get back to that People's Department vision, but making it agile, effective, and sustainable for the 21st century. It's a proactive attempt to improve how the USDA manages its core resources to maximize its impact.
Okay, that sets the stage beautifully. Let's dive into the first concrete principle of this reorganization then. Aligning the workforce and financial resources. This seems to directly address those material and energy components we just discussed. How is the USDA tackling that?
Right, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. The Secretary's memorandum provides some important context here. It points out some trends over the last 4 years that were, well, challenging from a sustainability perspective.
Like what?
The USDA's workforce actually grew by about 8%. And at the same time, employee salaries went up by 14.5%.
Wow, okay. Significant increases in personnel costs.
Very significant. And here's the kicker, the really crucial detail from the source. A substantial chunk of those salaries was being paid for using temporary funding.
Temporary funding for permanent-sounding growth and raises. That
Yeah.
immediately sounds like, well, not a stable situation from a systems point of view.
Exactly. It's inherently unstable. So the memo is very clear. While this reorganization is not being framed as a massive traditional layoff,
It's not just about cutting heads.
right, but it is explicitly designed to, and the memo says, make certain USDA can afford its workforce. Essentially, right-sizing its structure to match sustainable funding. It's about long-term fiscal health.
So how are they achieving that? What are the mechanisms? Are they just handing out pink slips?
Actually, the main emphasis is on voluntary programs, trying to minimize disruption for employees. The memo details several tools being used.
So yes.
Things like the Deferred Retirement Program, or DRP. There's also Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, VRA, and Voluntary Separation Incentive Payments, VSEPs, basically, buyouts.
Okay, so offering incentives for people who might be considering retirement or leaving anyway.
Exactly, giving them options to transition out voluntarily with some financial cushion. And the numbers are pretty striking. The memo states that as of its date, 15,364 individuals had already voluntarily elected deferred resignation.
15,000, that's huge.
Yeah.
That suggests a lot of the change might be happening through these voluntary routes already. Maybe a lot of people were ready.
It certainly indicates a substantial shift is underway, largely driven by employee choice. It implies these programs provided an attractive pathway for many.
So beyond those voluntary options, what else? The memo mentioned other tools.
Yes, it also talks about using directed and voluntary reassignments. This isn't just about reducing the overall number, it's also about moving people strategically, aligning the workforce, the talent, with the highest mission priorities, getting the right people in the right places.
Okay, so redeployment is part of it too.
Yeah.
But what about actual layoffs, reductions in force, or RIFs? Are those off the table?
Not entirely off the table, but the memo emphasizes they are a last resort. It states RIFs will be focused and limited, only used if absolutely necessary, and they require approval from the Deputy Secretary.
So a much more considered, less blunt approach than just across-the-board cuts. They seem aware of the human impact.
It appears so. The focus is definitely on achieving the necessary realignment, primarily through voluntary means and strategic moves first.
Okay, so from that system's perspective, this whole strategy, voluntary programs, reassignments, limited RIFs, it aims to create financial stability, the energy part. But how does it deal with the inherent fluctuations in some USDA agencies? You mentioned this idea of mitigating adverse consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the Forest Service. During a bad fire season, they need a massive surge capacity, often temporary firefighters.
Absolutely. Or the Agricultural Marketing Service during harvest, they need lots of graders suddenly. Or farm production and conservation field staff for seasonal work.
These functions need huge flexibility, right? They rely on temporary workers. How does right-sizing the permanent staff help that? Doesn't it risk cutting into muscle?
That's a great question, and it gets to the nuance here. It's not just about cutting, it's about creating agility
Right.
by proactively managing the size and structure of the permanent year-round workforce.
Through those voluntary programs and reassignments.
Exactly. By making that core structure leaner and more efficiently deployed, the USDA creates more fiscal breathing room within its budget.
Ah, okay. So if the permanent payroll is lower,
You have more flexibility to scale up temporarily when needed. You can bring on those essential seasonal firefighters or harvest graders or field staff when the demand surges without breaking the bank.
so it prevents being overstaffed and financially strapped in the quiet times, but also ensures you can afford the critical temporary help during peak times because the baseline budget isn't already maxed out on permanent staff.
Precisely. It makes the underlying system more robust and adaptable to the natural ups and downs of its work. You maintain the core capabilities, reduce the overall fixed overhead, and crucially, lessen the reliance on uncertain temporary funding sources for core functions.
Got it. So this financial and personnel alignment, it's really foundational. It sets the stage for the department to be more nimble, more responsive.
Absolutely. And that agility is crucial for the next big principle we need to talk about: the significant spatial shifts, the relocations.
Right. Principle 2. Strengthening feedback loops through strategic relocation. This is where the physical location of the USDA's material, its people, its infrastructure, really comes under the microscope.
Indeed. And the current situation, as laid out in the Secretary's memo, presents what Weaver's analysis calls a profound civic irony.
Okay, intrigued. What's the irony?
Well, currently, about 4,600 USDA employees work in the National Capital Region, the NCR-DC, and its immediate suburbs.
A significant concentration.
Huge. And the NCR is famously one of the most expensive places to live in the entire country. This is reflected in its federal salary locality rate. It's 33.94% higher than the base pay.
Wow, a third higher just for location adjustment. That's a big cost driver.
It is, and the reorganization's goal here is dramatic: to retain no more than 2,000 employees within the NCR once this is all done.
So more than half are moving out of DC area. That's a massive shift.
A huge exodus. And Weaver really hammers home that profound civic irony. You have the People's Department, founded to serve agricultural and rural America,
Right.
headquartered in a region whose residents famously protest taxation without representation on their license plates. It highlights this potential disconnect, this geographic distance between the agency and the very people it's meant to serve.
So the physical separation might create a functional, maybe even a philosophical gap. It could subtly undermine the mission.
That's the argument Weaver makes. He stresses this isn't just about saving money on rent and salaries, although that's definitely a factor, a significant benefit given the NCR costs.
It's more strategic than just cost cutting.
He calls it a strategically sound decision. The idea is to embed the agency physically within the agricultural heartlands it serves.
How does that help strategically?
The logic presented is that by moving thousands of administrators, analysts, program managers, and their families into these communities, their votes, their civic engagement, living day-to-day life there, it will give them meaningful input and understanding of the issues affecting their agricultural neighbors.
Ah, so it directly addresses that civic irony by physically reconnecting the department's people with its core constituents. It fosters more empathy, more informed policy.
That's the intention. It's about grounding the agency staff in the realities of the communities they serve, moving beyond just DC perspectives.
Okay, so it's about changing the environment, the lived experience for the employees. Where exactly are they moving? The memo specified locations, right?
Yes, 5 specific hub locations were chosen, and the selection wasn't random. They looked at existing concentrations of USDA employees trying to build on existing presence and, importantly, the cost of living.
Makes sense. So where are these hubs?
All right, first, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
A real hotspot for agri-tech, poultry, specialty crops, and the locality pay there, 22.24%, much lower than D.C.
Okay, Raleigh. Where else?
Kansas City, Missouri, right in the heart of the grain belt, and it's becoming a major center for animal health innovation. Locality rate there is 18.97%.
Significant savings. Next.
Indianapolis, Indiana, a powerhouse for corn, soybeans, and also life sciences related to agriculture. Locality rate, 18.15%.
Indiana.
Two more. Fort Collins, Colorado. This one's key for the West livestock ranching, major water management issues. Its locality rate is higher, 30.52%, but it reflects its critical regional importance and existing infrastructure.
Okay, makes sense for the West. And the last one.
Salt Lake City, Utah. vital for cattle, dairy, and especially for managing public lands, which is huge out west. And it has the lowest locality rate of the hubs, 17.06%.
So Raleigh, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Fort Collins, Salt Lake City, it really feels like they're planting flags across the agricultural map, diversifying way beyond the Beltway.
That's clearly the goal. And beyond these 5 main hubs, the memo also mentions 2 other key administrative support locations:
Oh, where are those?
Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. The rationale given is that these places already have large numbers of HR staff supporting critical public safety functions, like for the Forest Service firefighters, perhaps. So it makes sense to consolidate certain specialized support roles there.
So strategic support hubs, too. Are they keeping anything else outside these main hubs?
Yes, they're careful to point out they're retaining other critical service centers and labs in places like St. Louis, Missouri, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Missoula, Montana.
Ah, so places with specific established functions aren't necessarily being uprooted.
Exactly. It shows a balance between consolidation for efficiency and maintaining vital localized expertise where it already exists and makes sense.
Okay, here's where the systems thinking angle gets really interesting again. Weaver's analysis argues that putting these human assets, the employees, into these farm country centers creates tighter, more effective feedback loops.
Yes, that's a central point in his analysis.
Okay, but beyond just being physically closer, how does moving people to Kansas City or Raleigh fundamentally change the culture or the perspective inside the USDA? And how does that translate into better results for, say, a farmer in Iowa or a rancher in Utah?
That's a fantastic question because it gets to the heart of what feedback loop means here. In systems thinking, a feedback loop is how a system learns and adapts. Information about the system's output gets fed back in as input, influencing future actions.
Okay.
So tighter, more effective feedback loops mean better interconnectedness and faster, more accurate learning and response. When USDA employees are living and working in Raleigh or Fort Collins,
They're not just reading reports from afar.
exactly, they are directly exposed day in and day out to the real-time challenges, the successes, the subtle needs of the local agricultural community. They see the impact of drought firsthand. They hear about market volatility at the local co-op. They understand the difficulty a small town might have navigating federal grant applications because they live there.
So the information they get isn't filtered through layers of bureaucracy back in D.C. It's more immediate, more raw, maybe more authentic.
Precisely. That direct exposure fosters a different kind of understanding, maybe more empathy, more urgency. It allows the agency, theoretically, to gather information more effectively and then respond much more quickly and appropriately.
Faster course correction on programs, more relevant research topics, policies that actually reflect what's happening on the ground.
That's the goal. The physical proximity aims to create a more immediate, authentic flow of information. This helps ensure resources, the energy and material get spent on actual mission-critical work, not on excessive overhead, because the insights driving those decisions are more direct, more accurate, and informed by that lived experience.
So the relocation isn't just logistics. It's designed to fundamentally change how the system gathers and processes information, how it learns.
Yes. It profoundly impacts information flow, decision-making quality, and ultimately how well the agency understands and serves its constituents, which sets the stage perfectly for the internal structural changes.
And speaking of physical changes, the memo also details what's happening to the actual buildings back in the National Capital Region. This really makes the NCR footprint reduction tangible.
It does. It shows the commitment is real. They are retaining some key locations. The iconic Witten building, the main USDA headquarters, stays. That maintains a symbolic presence.
Okay, HQ stays. What else?
The Yates building and the National Agricultural Library are also being retained. And the plan is to fully utilize the office space within them, consolidating other staff and functions there. So efficiency even within the remaining D.C. presence.
But others are definitely going. Big ones.
Oh, yes. The huge South building is being vacated, as is Braddock Place. That significantly cuts down the leased space.
Okay. What about research facilities? Beltsville is massive.
Right. The Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, BARC, that's a major sprawling campus. It will be vacated, but over multiple years. The memo stresses doing this carefully to avoid disrupting critical, often long-term research projects.
That seems prudent. Any others?
The George Washington Carver Center, GWCC. That's being used temporarily during the transition, but the plan is to sell or transfer it once that's done.
So these aren't small changes. Selling buildings, vacating major centers. It's concrete evidence of that strategic shift away from the NCR, reinforcing the move towards those hubs and those tighter feedback loops.
Absolutely. It's the physical manifestation of the strategy.
Okay, so we've covered aligning the workforce and finances to fight entropy. We've covered the strategic relocations to strengthen feedback loops. Now let's get into the internal wiring, the structure, and information flow itself. This brings us to Principle 3, eliminating management layers, and Principle 4, consolidating support functions. This feels like where the deep system refactoring really happens.
It really is. This is about optimizing the internal machinery. We start with Principle 3, which tackles the concept of hierarchy from general systems theory.
Hierarchy. Okay, org charts, layers of management. Necessary, presumably.
Oh, absolutely necessary for organization. For clear lines of authority in any big system, you need structure. But hierarchies can, over time, become bloated.
Bloated, meaning too many layers.
Exactly. Too many layers of middle management, too many regional structures that might have made sense once but are now redundant. And when that happens, the analysis argues, these layers can actually slow down communication and distort information as it tries to travel up or down the chain.
Like a game of telephone, but with important policy information or field reports. Things get lost, diluted, misinterpreted.
Precisely. It hinders agile decision-making. It disconnects the leadership from the front lines.
So the plan explicitly aims to flatten this hierarchy. How?
Primarily by phasing out redundant regional offices across several agencies. The idea is to remove those unnecessary intermediate layers.
And the benefit of that flattening is?
Information can move more freely, more efficiently, more accurately from the operational front lines to the decision-making core. People doing the work, seeing the issues firsthand, their insights can reach the top more directly.
Which should lead to faster, more informed decisions, more responsive actions, empowering the front lines, in a way.
That's the systemic goal. And the memo gives very concrete examples of which agencies are seeing these changes. It shows the breadth of this structural shift.
Okay, let's walk through a few. It helps grasp the scale.
Sure. For the Agriculture Research Service, ARS, a major science arm, their regional area offices are being eliminated. Those functions move up to the National Office of National Programs, centralizing research oversight.
Okay, ARS streamlined. Who else?
The National Agricultural Statistics Service, NASS, they provide critical ag data. They're consolidating their current 12 regions down to align with the 5 new USDA hubs. This happens over several years, bringing data collection physically closer to the hubs.
NAS aligning with hubs. Makes sense. Food programs.
The Food and Nutrition Service, FNS, which runs SNAP and school lunches, vital programs, they're reducing from 7 regions down to 5, also aligning with the hubs and service centers over 2 years. Again, enhancing efficiency in program delivery.
Okay. Now, the Forest Service, that's a huge one. Massive scope. Critical functions like firefighting. What's happening with their regional structure? It's famously complex.
Yes, significant changes there too. The plan is to phase out their 9 existing regional offices over the next year.
9 regional HQs gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they're doing it carefully, considering the ongoing fire season to avoid disruption. They will keep a smaller state office in Juneau, Alaska, recognizing Alaska's unique needs, and an Eastern Service Center in Athens, Georgia.
So, some strategic presence remains. What about their research stations?
The standalone research stations are being consolidated into a single location in Fort Collins, Colorado, one of the new hubs. However, they are specifically retaining the Fire Sciences Lab and the Forest Products Lab, which are nationally critical.
Okay, consolidation, but protecting key assets.
Yeah.
Anyone else majorly affected?
The Natural Resources Conservation Service, and RCS, focused on soil and water conservation on private lands. They will also align their regional structure with the 5 new USDA hub locations.
NRCS aligned too? And APHS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection.
Interestingly, the memo notes the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS centers, will stay where they are because they already happen to be located within the new USDA hub locations.
So it shows they aren't just making changes for change's sake. If it already fits the model, it stays.
Exactly. It suggests a targeted approach, identifying specific redundancies rather than a blanket cut.
So this flattening, removing layers, aligning regions with hubs, it's clearly about improving information flow, making agencies nimbler. But you said it's complemented powerfully by Principle 4, consolidating support functions.
Yes. This is where another key systems concept comes in, isomorphism.
Isomorphism. Sounds academic, but you said it has very practical implications here.
It's extremely practical. It's a highly strategic part of this whole plan. The basic idea is to streamline how the USDA operates by consolidating common support functions.
What kind of functions?
Things like human resources, HR, information technology, IT, grants management, legal services, communications, budget, contracting, functions that pretty much every agency within the USDA needs, right?
Sure, everyone needs HR, IT.
But traditionally, many individual agencies within the USDA ran their own separate versions of these services, often duplicating effort, using different systems, leading to inefficiencies.
So instead of, say, 20 different HR departments, each doing things slightly differently.
The department is creating a single, centralized, optimized operating system for these common needs. That's the goal.
And isomorphism is the fancy term for recognizing that these functions are basically the same across different parts of the organization.
Pretty much. It means identifying common patterns or functions that exist across different subsystems. Recognizing that the core process of hiring someone or managing a budget or handling a FOIA request is fundamentally similar whether you're doing it for the Forest Service or the Food Safety and Inspection Service.
So why have dozens of separate, potentially less efficient units doing it when you could have one optimized central service that develops best practices and serves everyone more efficiently?
Exactly. Weaver's analysis puts it bluntly. This is the very definition of removing waste. It eliminates redundancy. It standardizes processes. It leverages economies of scale. And crucially,
It frees up the individual agency.
yes, it
Yeah.
frees them up to focus their limited resources, their time, their people, their budget on their unique specialized missions, whether that's fighting forest fires, inspecting meat, or developing new drought-resistant crops, rather than getting bogged down in administrative duplication.
That makes perfect sense. The memo must list specifics here, too,
Yeah.
because the potential scope feels enormous.
It does, and the scale is genuinely impressive. It's a comprehensive overhaul of the administrative backbone.
Okay, give us some highlights. What's being consolidated?
All right, deep breath. Civil rights functions. Consolidating into the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights for Consistency, FOIA and Information Management, moving under the Office of General Counsel for better legal oversight.
Centralizing in the Office of Congressional Relations, Communications and Public Affairs. Consolidating within the Office of Communication where feasible for a unified voice.
Okay, external relations streamlined. What about internal finance and IT?
Big changes. Eliminating duplication between the Office of Budget and Program Analysis and the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to streamline budget and finance. IT consolidation activities are planned, aiming for services to be provided centrally by the Office of the Chief Information Officer where possible. Think MIF offices. Unified systems, better security, efficiency.
HR and contracting. Always complex areas.
Tribal relations. Consolidating within mission areas, but ensuring the Office of Tribal Relations still delivers required functions.
Centralizing under the Assistant Secretary for Administration, ASA. But they're keeping dedicated teams specifically for wildland firefighting hiring, recognizing that unique, urgent need.
Also consolidating under ASA, again with dedicated teams for specific needs like commodity procurement and firefighting support. And a big move. Common goods and services contracting will shift to the General Services Administration, GSA, in FY 2026, leveraging government-wide buying power. The Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business gets reduced to a single position to cut redundancy.
Wow, real estate. Grants.
Lease administration. Consolidating under ASA grants and financial assistance. Consolidating for better controls and efficiency, including moving grant administration from offices with limited capacity to offices better equipped to handle it. And finally, student programs, eliminating overlap between the Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement, OPPE, and ARS by moving OPPE student programs to ARS, streamlining talent pipelines.
That is a truly staggering list. It touches almost every single administrative function across the entire department. It really is a total overhaul of the internal operating system.
It absolutely is. This systemic approach, using that idea of isomorphism, is designed to root out redundancy, standardize best practices, and again, liberate those mission-focused agencies to do their primary jobs, ensuring that energy and material go to the mission, not to inefficient internal processes.
So these profound structural changes, flattening hierarchy, consolidating support, they're all working together towards a single overarching goal, right?
Yes, a more effective, more efficient, more mission-focused USDA.
Okay, so we've walked through all these incredibly detailed changes, the workforce alignment, the relocations, the flattening of hierarchy, the consolidation of support. What's the big promise here at the end of the day? Weaver's analysis keeps calling this a sophisticated refactoring effort, not just downsizing. That feels like a crucial distinction.
It absolutely is, and it's the core argument, really. This is not presented as simple downsizing or budget cutting. It's framed as sophisticated refactoring.
What does refactoring mean in this systems context? It sounds like a term from software development.
It kind of is, but it applies perfectly here. Refactoring means restructuring an existing system, changing its internal structure without changing its external behavior or outputs, except to improve them.
Ah, okay. So the USDA still provides the same services: food safety, farm support, conservation, research, hopefully even better, but the internal wiring, the way it operates, is being rebuilt for better performance.
Exactly. Better performance, more agility, better resilience against that entropy we talked about. The explicit aim is to increase the efficiency of the entire system.
So going back to those core components: energy, material, information. The ultimate goal of this refactoring is to create a USDA where a much higher percentage of those inputs get converted directly into valuable outputs and services for the American people.
That's the objective. Maximizing the mission impact for every dollar spent, every person employed, every piece of data gathered. Less waste, more value.
And this, you said, leads to the most exciting concept in systems thinking: emergent property.
Yes, this is the potential payoff for all this complex work. An emergent property is something new, a characteristic of the whole system that you wouldn't find just by looking at the individual parts or the individual changes. It arises from the interactions of those parts working together in this new, optimized way.
It's the idea that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts.
Precisely. That's the classic definition.
So what's the hoped-for emergent property from this refactored USDA? What's the big beneficial outcome that arises from all these changes working together?
Well, think back to those institutions like the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, the land-grant universities, or just individual farmers, ranchers, consumers, rural communities. For them, the analysis suggests this should ultimately be very good news.
Access.
Because a leaner, less bureaucratic USDA, one that's freed itself from the weight of its own inertia, as Weaver puts it, that agency has the potential to direct more resources, better guidance, and form more effective partnerships.
So the emergent property isn't just internal efficiency, it's enhanced external impact.
Exactly. It could mean faster access to loans or conservation programs for farmers, research that more quickly addresses emerging pests or climate challenges, more responsive support during natural disasters, programs that feel truly connected to real-world needs, not just bureaucratic mandates.
It's about the USDA becoming a more effective partner, a more vital force in fulfilling that original People's Department mission.
That's the desired emergent property. A government agency that is truly a sum greater than its parts, focused single-mindedly on its service mission, cultivating an environment where information flows, innovation happens, and resources are deployed with maximum impact. That's the potential this refactoring aims to unlock.
What an incredibly detailed journey. We've really explored this massive USDA reorganization through that powerful systems lens. We started with the history, Lincoln's vision, confronted the challenge of entropy in large systems.
Then we unpack the core principles, aligning workforce and finances, the strategic relocations to build better feedback loops, flattening the hierarchy, and using isomorphism to consolidate support functions and cut waste.
Right. We saw how the Secretary's memo laid out the what and the how, while Weaver's analysis gave us the why through that systems perspective, explaining concepts like entropy, feedback loops, hierarchy, isomorphism.
And ultimately, how all these interconnected changes aim for that emergent property, a refactored, more agile, resilient, and effective USDA, truly focused on serving the American people.
It's been fascinating. So thinking about this comprehensive systems approach applied to the USDA, it leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? What might be the next frontier for applying this kind of thinking?
That's a great question. Could these lessons about tackling entropy, optimizing feedback loops, streamlining structure through hierarchy and isomorphism be applied to other huge, complex government agencies? Or even large private sector organizations facing similar issues?
Yeah, agencies struggling with bureaucratic bloat or feeling disconnected from the people they serve or just needing to become more efficient and responsive. How can the USDA's journey, its successes, and maybe its challenges through this process inform how we think about improving other vital institutions?
It really underscores how looking at problems through a systemic lens, understanding the interconnectedness of parts, can transform our understanding of changes that might otherwise seem just overwhelming or chaotic.
Yeah.
Something definitely worth pondering.